Anyone who remembers VenomFangX, raise your hand. I don't know why you're doing that, I can't see you. What are you, stupid? But I'm guessing quite a few of you wouldn't raise your hand even if I could, and that's okay, I understand. Half of you probably weren't even conceived yet when he was last active. Like 3 years ago. But you see, kids, back in my day, we had these people called creationists, whose main ambition was to embarrass themselves publicly for our entertainment. That's all we had to watch back in the days when we only had 3 YouTube channels. Now, don't run away. This video is not about old-timey things like creationism or rotary phones or Nazis, but it is about one of these creationists called the VenomFangX. It's an adorably juvenile name, I know. And I'm not saying that as an insult by any means. My name is Logicked. What room do I have to talk? I actually think it's great. I wish more people would have zany internet names like ours. Anyway, VenomFangX just rejoined us here on YouTube after unlisting or deleting all his old videos. And just to refresh your memory, if you have actually seen him before but you just don't remember, this is the video he's most famous for.
My username on YouTube is VenomFangX. As many of you may know, there has been a dispute between Thunderfoot and myself over the past few weeks. We have resolved that dispute, and as part of the resolution, I am here to express my regret for the misuse of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
There we go. I think I just saw some light bulbs flicker on over some heads. So let's see what he's talking about these days.
If you've spent any time on YouTube and—
Whoa, sorry to stop you, but you sound exactly like Kind Heathen now.
How's it going, everyone? Today's video, we have an assert Christian crybaby.
Age really did a number on your voice. Wait, I should decide what I'm going to call you. So, your real first name, at least, has been widely known for years, but I guess since you're not using it in this video and you're hiding your face and altering your voice for some reason, maybe you're kind of trying to re-anonymize somehow a little bit, despite using the same channel name as before. I'm not sure how well that's going to work for you, but far be it from me to interfere, so Venom it is. No, actually, on second thought, we haven't actually met yet. I mean, we did exchange like 2 YouTube comments, but we're probably not on a first-name basis yet, right? My apologies for the early interruption, Mr. X. Please go on.
if you've spent any time on YouTube engaged in the atheist versus theist debates, you've no doubt noticed that atheists like to decorate themselves with words like thought, think, reason, logic.
Hey, that's me! Thanks for the inclusion, man.
Intelligent, free, and so on. The message is clear. They think they're smarter than you if you believe in God.
Actually, no, that's not the message of my name at all. See, wow, I think this is the first time I mentioned this on my channel, so you're already digging into my deep dark secrets here. Very insightful, Mr. X. Anyway, way back before I ever created my YouTube account, I came up with the name Logicked in reference to programming logic. I just thought it sounded cool, you know? The combination of a reference to what I was doing as well as to its impact on me. Because over the years, I'd been more and more interested in the logical structure of code. Not so much in terms of what it can make a computer do, but more in terms of how it represents a particular mode of processing information, which, if you understand it, you can apply it to your thoughts about pretty much anything in a way that makes you kind of more likely to reach a sensible answer. At least I found that. So I tried to implement it into my thinking so that I could have a better understanding of the world around me, a better way of interpreting all that input. And so I verbed a noun to represent how my way of seeing the world had been impacted by that, which of course was logicked. By the way, teach kids programming in school. It's useful for more than just getting a good job. Anyway, since I liked the name, I started using it around, and I ended up creating this YouTube account in 2011 with that name, before I'd ever seen any religious or anti-religious content on here, at least that I remember. I definitely wasn't engaged with it. And it wasn't until a little while later that I started to notice the religious and anti-religious videos, because I was just using YouTube more. And so I spent a few months watching those, absorbing the information and the arguments, trying to pick out the flaws in the arguments, both of the religious people and the atheists alike, until finally I ended up getting so annoyed about all of it that I had to start making videos of my own. So no, my name does not mean I think I'm smarter than you, although I probably am. But I can't speak for anyone else, of course.
Now, this is both self-aggrandizing and insulting to any person who has ever in the history of the world reasoned about God's existence and concluded that yes, he exists.
So you're kind of like this easily offended little weenie, huh? Look at the names you showed on screen. Thoughtful Atheist, Thinking Atheist, Big Think. That's not even an atheist channel. I mean, sure, they have atheists on, but they also have religious people, and they talk about all kinds of stuff. Free Thinker, that doesn't even refer to intelligence. Intelligent Atheist, Rational Skeptic, Recent Rally, Free Thought. Look, I can maybe get behind you on the ingrandizing thing. At least for some of those. If I didn't, I think I'd have to be denying the obvious, but these people are not insulting you. They're not even talking about you or theists at all. They're talking about themselves. Like, if you found someone whose username was, I don't know, theists are all dumb idiots 69 or something, sure, that'd be an insult. But none of the names you showed were like that. So where's the insult? What do you feel insulted by? The fact that they feel like they're smart? The fact that they think they're right? You feel smart. You think you're right. That doesn't mean you're insulting me just by taking up an opposing position to mine and declaring that you're correct. The only reason someone would feel insulted by that is if they were like that really insecure stupid guy from A Fish Called Wanda.
Don't call me stupid.
By the way, there are theists with similar names who clearly think they're both smart and correct. A few quick searches brought up these ones, and I'm sure there are more. Reasonable Faith Org, that's William Lane Craig. The Logical Christian Ministry. Rational Belief in God. Rational Theist Matt. Think International. Stand to Reason. Done a couple videos on those guys. Come and Reason Ministries. Let Us Reason. Rational Believer. Rational Catholicism. Oh, their mere existence is so insulting! Stop calling all atheists stupid, you meanie heads! Reported for hate speech! Enjoy being demonetized!
In my experience, atheism on YouTube in particular is less about reasoning carefully and more about insulting the opposition and making themselves feel like they're more intelligent than anyone who disagrees with them.
He complained in the middle of the video he made to insult the opposition and make himself feel more intelligent than the people who disagree with him.
The ultimate irony behind all of that pride is this. The atheist exclusively, unlike anyone else, believes that there is no logic, no reason, no intelligence, no rationality behind existence itself. Theirs is an existence based entirely on happenstance. Reality just so happens to be such that it allows atheists to exist, but reality did not by way of reason, thought, or logic bring about their existence. So while championing themselves as the bright and shining examples of intelligence and reason and thought, they reject any and all notions that their own existence is the result of any kind of intelligence, reason, thought, or logic.
The Christian believes that there is no sin in the creator of existence itself. Reality just so happens to be such that it allows sin to exist, but reality did not by way of sin bring about people's existence. While presenting themselves as the fallen, depraved examples of sinful creatures, they reject any and all notions that their own existence is the result of any kind of sinful, fallen, depraved being. Is that clear enough to get the point across, or do I have to simplify it for you? That's good enough for now. I'm sure that you'll force me to expand on it anyway, at excruciating length.
The absurdity of atheism in light of this fact creates the ultimate disparity, the most profound contradiction.
The absurdity creates a contradiction? So the absurdity doesn't come from the contradiction, but the contradiction comes from the absurdity. Okay, so what's the contradiction then? Is atheism both absurd and not absurd?
There is literally no other worldview that so embraces certain virtues then fundamentally rejects the necessary foundations for those virtues, to the point of defeating their own worldview.
I genuinely have no idea what train of thought led you to this idea, but apparently you expect us to just unquestioningly accept that God is necessary for logic to work, without your lazy ass so much as hinting at your reasoning. But hey, maybe you'll clarify it later in the video. Spoiler, you won't, really.
This is so bizarre, so utterly disastrous, that one can scarcely think of anything akin to it. Even creating a parody of it is difficult, which is why atheism is so difficult to insult.
Spent a lot of time trying to think of good insults for atheism, have you? Interesting. I think you from earlier in the video would have some strong words for you from now in the video.
In my experience,
Christianity
on YouTube in particular, is less about reasoning carefully and more about insulting the opposition and making themselves feel like they're more intelligent than anyone who disagrees with them. To believe nothing is the cause of everything is itself the greatest joke.
What? I think you missed a step somewhere. Let me replay that whole piece real quick just so it's clear how abrupt that transition was.
This is so bizarre, so utterly disastrous, that one can scarcely think of anything akin to it. Even creating a parody of it is difficult, which is why atheism is so difficult to insult. To believe nothing is the cause of everything is itself the greatest joke.
There's a contradiction between believing you have reason but not believing you were created by someone with reason. This is so bizarre. How can you believe nothing created everything? Huh? What, did you forget what you were talking about in the middle of talking about it? If you were just rambling without a script, it'd be one thing, but it's pretty obvious you had a script. You're clearly reading, and you posted the script in the comments as a transcript, even though it's not quite an accurate transcript because you didn't update it to include your ad-libs, as I learned to my great annoyance while working on my own script. By the way, just so you know, I don't believe nothing created everything. I don't even believe that everything had an origin, let alone an origin by creation. I also don't believe it didn't. I have no opinion on that subject, and as a matter of fact, I have no good way to form an opinion on that subject, because the information possessed not just by me, but by our entire species right now, is not sufficient. So if I held any firm belief about that, I would be a fool. Now, of course, some ideas are more elegant and line up better with current data, but they still haven't reached the point of warranting actual belief, as far as I can tell. But what I do believe is that nobody knows the origin of everything, or if it has an origin at all, or even what everything is, you included. You and I are stuck in the same little boat in a very big ocean, although I'm well aware that you're lost in a heat-stroke-induced fantasy that you're standing on dry land.
For the sake of illustration, imagine a conspiracy of vegetarians who decide the only way to stop people from eating meat is to kill all the animals. It's that self-defeating.
Actually, that's not a very good illustration. It's kind of actually more confusing than it is helpful. Is it supposed to be an analogy? So, what, the atheists are the vegetarians, obviously, and we decide that the only way to stop people from believing in God is to kill God? Which would, of course, be another topic altogether. Okay, so maybe it's not an analogy, which pretty much kills any hope it had of illustrating anything. I guess you're just trying to explain what it means for something to be self-defeating, so you're like, this thing is self-defeating. And to explain what self-defeating means, let me show you a different thing that's self-defeating in a different way. Okay, that's not even to mention that you haven't even bothered to explain how everything coming from nothing is self-defeating. I guess that's just another thing you expect us to take at face value. I don't know, if you're going to go through the extra trouble to write a script, why wouldn't you go back through it and make sure that the stuff you say in it at least makes sense? Otherwise, you might as well just talk off the cuff.
You cannot, on one hand, embrace the benefits of thought, reason, rationality, and logic, and on the other hand, reject any and all notions that reason, rationality, logic, and thought are at the foundations of reality itself.
Yeah, you can. I'm doing it right now. Now, let's take a look at a comment that you left on your own video to clarify what you're trying to say here. The fact that the universe is consistent enough and such that it allows for logic and reason to exist strongly indicates, even proves, that whatever the cause of the universe was made the precise conditions to allow for logic and reason to exist. Right, so we're not even talking about reason and logic as such, we're talking more about the structure of the universe, okay? It follows then that whatever the cause was that brought about logic and reason must of necessity be logical and reasonable. Why? Otherwise, how do you account for the effect it produced having logic and reason? Causes produce effects that are different from the cause? So, you're making several claims here. First, that the universe was caused, which may or may not be true. Second, that the universe is such that logic and reason are useful tools for interpreting it. True, I'd say, in the sense that the laws of logic make sense. And this isn't really anything special, I should point out, since all that's really required for the laws of logic to be true is that there exists some truth, that there exists some fundamental reality. Any reality. If there's something, anything, that really is real, that's true, that exists, then the laws of logic apply by default. For them not to work would require a lack of any real reality at all, and there's no reason to think that even ever could be the case. And that may sound odd, but it's based on what the laws of logic actually state. Taken together, all they really say is that whatever's true is unambiguously true. They're kind of a tautological assertion that whatever's real is really real and only real, and not unreal at the same time. If reality can also be unreality, if fundamental truth and falsehood are blurred, there can be no reliable way to deduce one true fact from another, or to determine truth at all. But because all these laws actually state and require is the reality of reality, they're not special features of our universe. They apply to any reality, every reality, with or without humans, with or without a universe, with or without a god, with or without anything at all. Even in a completely empty void in total nothingness, with no universe, no origin, no creation, whatever you want to call it, it's still true, and it cannot simultaneously be false, that there is nothing. And I suspect you agree, or at least you should, because otherwise it has some really interesting implications for the universe's origin and for God. So yeah, we'll call that agreement. And third, that such a universe requires something that thinks logically and reasonably to create it. And at that point, we have total disagreement. You might as well have said a universe that can be described in terms of physical laws must have been created by someone who studies physics, for all the sense that makes. First off, I don't see any way to get from the mere assertion that the universe is consistent enough to be apprehended by a mind to the truth of the very separate claim that the universe emanated from a mind. I mean, essentially what you're saying is that for the universe to not operate like a crazy infinite improbability drive, where things just exist and don't exist at the same time, or things can be two different things at the same time, someone would have actually had to sit down and calculate how to make a universe that's not like that, as if that's the default state of reality. That basically is what you're asserting, and I'm not sure where you're getting that idea. Like, you actually have to have some reason for why that would be the natural state of things. And you don't believe that's the natural state of things because you believe in God. But we'll get to that. I will talk about that. Just remind me. Yeah. But yeah, the only state of things that we've ever observed in terms of logical consistency is logical consistency, in the sense of allowing logical syllogisms and mathematics and whatever to work. Use whatever term you want. But if that's the only state of things that we've ever observed, if we don't even know if the alternate state is even possible, why are you essentially asserting that the other state, total inconsistency, total logical failure, the total impossibility for logic to have any function at all, is the default state of reality? Like, what is your reasoning? You have to have some. Clearly you've thought about this, so what have you come up with? Who knows, Mr. X? Maybe if you gave a good argument for that point, as well as why to get from that point to logical consistency would require a mind that already operates based on logical consistency, you could convince me. Maybe you have some great reasoning for it, but you didn't even find it worth your time to try to present it. And it's particularly unconvincing to me because, as I see it, your thinking is totally backwards. Like, I'm sitting here looking at the known entities, the universe, the mind, and I see that the mind arose after the universe, within the universe, and it conforms to the universe that it's in, just like the rain conforms to the hole that it falls into. I don't see why I would think that the universe is how it is because of the mind that experiences it from within, that operates based on its rules. It's much more parsimonious to think that the mind is how it is because of the universe that it experiences, and that if it experienced a different universe, the mind would operate differently. Or hell, not even just necessarily a different universe, but a different aspect of the universe. And the fact that the mind is suited to the environment it developed in is supported by the fact that as we get further and further away from the realm of our everyday experience, into things like relativity or quantum mechanics or deeper concepts, things become significantly harder to comprehend, and probably impossible for any human to comprehend intuitively. We have to resort to analogies about things that we understand, or mathematical formulas and so on. But those things are no less mundane and natural than anything that we regularly perceive. We just have an extreme amount of trouble with them because we're not used to them. Our minds didn't develop to even understand them. So even without leaving the universe, but just by changing simple things like scale or velocity, our comprehension starts to break down, showing just how specialized and limited our comprehension is. Or in other words, how fine-tuned it is to the universe, and not how fine-tuned the universe is to it. On the other hand, you look at the same known entities, the universe and the mind, and instead of seeing a mind that developed the ability to interpret aspects of the universe that it arose in, for some reason you decide that it's the other way around. The universe must have developed to permit interpretation by the mind. The universe developed with the mind in mind. The whole was built to the desired shape of the rain that would eventually fall into it. And as if that wasn't enough, you conclude from this that the whole must have been intentionally built by an extra-large being made out of water with the shape of that puddle, even though that being would never actually need to occupy that puddle, or that the universe was built by an extra-large version of a mind suited to the universe that it would never occupy. You've mixed up the causes with the effects, and so you're stuck adding extra causes to try to make that make sense, even though all you actually end up doing is adding unnecessary complications. Now, back to the God thing. The precise conditions can't be something created by God, even if your Christianity is correct. If God is logical, that means that there's some standard of what is and isn't logical that he has to adhere to, lest he cease to be logical. And therefore that standard of what is and isn't logical is more fundamental than he is. The consistency of logic, the ability of reality to permit consistent logic, is more fundamental than God. In other words, the laws of logic, upon which all logic is built, must be accurate for God to be logical. And that means that the ultimate reality within which God resides must be such that those laws are accurate. Now, of course, the word laws can throw confusion into this because guys like you will say, but who wrote the laws, And the answer, of course, is us. The laws themselves are nothing more than our descriptions of what we observe about how the universe appears to us to work. We looked at our experience of the world and we realized that it seems like these three things are always true, and so we take those as the basis for our thinking about things. So a less confusing term for someone like you might be logical absolutes. But personally, I like the phrase laws of logic, specifically because it implicitly points out that these things were created by us, and so they aren't really real things out there in the universe, but just how the universe appears to work. But I digress, so let's go a little bit deeper into this. So if God preceded the laws of logic, there's another implication, other than just he couldn't be logical, which is that nothing would definitively exist or not exist, or be true or be false. And that includes God. Even if I were to accept theism, I still could not accept God as the creator of those basic requirements of logic. And just to clarify for anyone who doesn't know, the laws of logic I'm talking about are basically, a thing is that thing. It's not both that thing and also not that thing at the same time and in the same sense. And a proposition is either true or false and not somewhere in the middle. So if God were to precede the reality that makes logic function, there would be absolutely nothing unusual about God not being God, or God simultaneously existing and not existing. The statement God exists could be both true and false and somewhere in the middle in a gray area, but also all those things I just said would also be true and not true at the same time, and, changing all the time, but not actually changing because they would also be true at the same time. Ugh. It'd be sheer madness, is what I'm saying. And I doubt you think that that's how things would have worked before God created the universe with its laws of logic, You, Mr. X, believe God exists. Period. Not that he exists and does not exist. You believe he's God, not that he's God and also not God. You think his thoughts function logically, or in other words, you think his thoughts function in accordance with, in obedience to, the logical nature of reality. And this can only be the case if God rests on the foundation of the laws of logic, or of a reality in which the laws of logic are true. So my point is, what you're presenting here is not an argument between theism and atheism. Throw that out. Because our two worldviews are in agreement here. The laws of logic come before anything else. You just happen to believe in one extra entity that follows them.
You would think that people who are so eager to embrace all things rational, logical, and reasonable would themselves be the ones who embrace the idea that behind existence itself is something rational, logical, and reasonable.
I can embrace the idea that identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle are basic requirements for the existence of things, regardless of whether the oldest thing you think exists is God or the universe or who knows what else. I can also embrace the idea that the logical laws and existence itself are requirements for logical thought to occur. But the idea that the foundation of all existence is something that both exists and thinks in accordance with logic, and yet somehow also precedes the most basic requirements for both that existence and that logic, is a denial of the laws of logic. You have to work through all the implications of your worldview before you start accusing others of failing to do the same, Mr. X.
However, to the contrary, the atheist is committed, emotionally, romantically, for whatever reason, to the idea that a chaotic, blind, unthinking, unintelligent, unrational process of a meaningless, purposeless nature brought about for no reason at all a universe with specific laws, ratios of elements, and a series of events that brought about, sustained, and flourished an entire world of reasonable, rational, thinking beings who rely on the fundamental rules of thought, reason, rationality, and logic in everything they do.
That's quite the sentence you built up there. Alright, let's take that piece by piece, because that'd be really confusing to address all at once.
However, to the contrary, the atheist is committed, emotionally, romantically, for whatever reason.
That's an odd generalization. Personally, and I can only speak for myself, I don't really find a non-theistic origin emotionally appealing. To be fair, I also don't find a theistic origin emotionally appealing. As a matter of fact, I think I'd be hard-pressed to find any particular origin that I find emotionally appealing. I mean, how everything got here just doesn't matter. Either way, everything's still here. I mean, yeah, I think that research into it is important. It's nice to satisfy our curiosity and understand the world. It's interesting, but it doesn't change anything about the here and now. If the deists are right, like you're arguing, and some kind of extra universal entity kicked the universe off, well, I guess that's neat. I mean, whatever. If not, that's cool too. It doesn't impact my life either way. It doesn't impact anyone's. So why would I feel anything about it? Now, I know there are atheists who disagree with me. Maybe I've just been stuck in my logic persona for too long. But those are my genuine feelings on it. Or lack thereof, maybe I should say.
To the idea that a chaotic, blind, unthinking, unintelligent, unrational process of a meaningless, purposeless nature.
There's quite a big difference between being emotionally and romantically committed to a belief in a meaningless process and just accepting that many processes actually do appear meaningless and purposeless. Does rock melting in a volcano have a purpose? Well, I guess a lot of people would assert so, but none of them have ever demonstrated that. And what if they don't? Is the lack of purpose emotionally appealing? No. Is it emotionally repulsive? Well, to some, presumably including you, but not to me. It just is. It's the way things are. Kind of like the laws of logic. I mean, sometimes things just are as they are, and it makes more sense to shrug and get on with your day than to start getting emotional and crying about it. And by the way, meaning and purpose have nothing to do with whether the universe was created by a logical god. I mean, we could just as easily be the logic-filled booger of a logical god sitting in his logical garbage can. Is that meaningful? Is that purposeful? No.
Brought about for no reason at all, a universe with specific laws, ratios of elements, and a series of events that brought about, sustained, and flourished an entire world of reasonable, rational, thinking beings.
Oh, believe me, I don't believe everyone in the world is reasonable or rational. Well, that's unfair. Maybe at some point everybody is. But at some point everybody's not, too. Anyway, once again I want to remind you that the question of whether the universe came about for a reason is a completely separate question from whether it required a logical god. These are two different things you're thinking about and you're conflating them. There's really no reason to bring up, well, reasons, unless your goal is to muddy the already murky waters.
Who rely on the fundamental rules of thought, reason, rationality, and logic in everything they do.
Well, no, not remotely, as I said. Humans are irrational and illogical just as much as they are rational and logical. But yeah, we do rely on the seemingly fundamental nature of reality as described by the 3 laws of logic, and that nature is what allows us to identify and interpret anything in any way at all, or indeed to exist or think logically. And as I've already explained, that's the basic nature of reality, regardless of whether a god exists within it or not.
Then these same beings who love and embrace their abilities to use reason and logic devote themselves entirely to the idea that there is absolutely nothing logical, reasonable, thoughtful, or rational behind their existence or the existence of the universe they reason about.
Then these same beings who love and embrace their ability to toss salad devote themselves entirely to the idea that there is absolutely nothing that tosses salad behind their existence or the existence of the universe. That's so silly. I mean, clearly the universe was constructed in a way that allows for salad tossing to exist. Clearly there's salad to toss, so the creator must be a salad tosser. As you can probably tell, I'm a little bit bored. This is going on way too long, and I have a lot of videos to do this month, and I'll tell you what. I'm gonna let you have the last word, and maybe I'll pick this back up in a part 2 if people are into that, okay? Sound good? Great.
And then, on top of all of that, they have the audacity to accuse those who recognize the order and intelligence all around them as being less intelligent than they are for daring to propose that the reason for this reason we see around us is something that itself possesses reason.
Don't ever call me stupid.
Just before you go, head on over to list.logicked.com. Type in your email address and submit it, and you'll be on my email list. You'll get videos a day early, and you won't have to worry about YouTube not notifying you about videos and so on. It's a way better system than this. And if the worst happens, if my channel goes away, if, I don't know, videos get taken down, whatever, I'll still be in touch with you and I can send those videos to you through the list. Also, Patreon, have to mention it. The people you're seeing on the screen right now are the people who donate $5 or more. And they and all of my patrons and all my PayPal supporters are great. They're what keep this channel going. Couldn't do it without them, at least not full time. I'd probably put up a video every like 3 months. Who knows? And what else? Follow me on Twitter, @Logicked. We've been having lots of fun over there lately, so join in. Alright, see you on the next video.